Hey guys, Reign of Dragoon here. So I don't normally make videos like this, especially someone who makes very small videos and occasional playthroughs, but I've been wanting to make something like this for a while now, and well, here I am.
Growing up, I always loved watching my mom play video games like Fatal Frame, Silent Hill, and Resident Evil. Stuff of the horror archetype. It's kind of funny how I would just sit there and watch her take pictures of these ghosts in Fatal Frame while I was being completely traumatized. I don't know if you guys have ever played a Fatal Frame, but there's a specific ghost type in the game that has long arms and has some pretty nasty lore behind him to boot. I couldn't sleep at night just thinking of the moment in that game, but I was so intrigued. Now, admittedly in my youth though, I wasn't as much of a fan of horror games as I was when I hit my teen years, but I specifically remember times where my mother would boot up Dark Cloud on the PlayStation 2, or Final Fantasy games. My eyes had opened to the JRPG world for the first time, and it had changed my life. Watching a group of ragtag people come together to become great friends and stop an impending threat is magical, especially seeing these characters develop not only in strength, but as people. It reflected on me as a person not only who I want to be, but who the people in my life should be. So, unfortunately, in the year of 2009, I was befallen with some devastating news that my mother had passed away due to circumstances I won't really get into here. It crushed me and I fell into a great depression. That was another battle I wasn't really ready for. And no, I don't want anyone here to feel sorry for me, but this does play a part in our journey to the love I have for video games and its storytelling compared to other media. In the years to follow, I would find things to identify myself with her, or remember her by, specifically her likes and interests. I played Resident Evil 5 with my cousin Andrew from start to finish, and it stuck with me so hard that from then on, my hunt for the rest of the games in the franchise had begun. I think Resident Evil was my introduction into my love for horror games, but what really made me passionate about storytelling and development of games was a little game I like to call Silent Hill 2. Silent Hill 2 follows the story of James Sunderland, who I won't get into many spoilers for, but as my favorite protagonist in the series, I really identify with him and his struggles with depression. Not the guilt aspect in what he did so much as what he's battling with. You finally get to the part of the game where the truth is revealed to you, you still can't help but kind of feel sorry for the guy. It was a call to face my own demons and become the person I need to be. So let's get into why storytelling in video games is so unique and just straight up art in my eyes. What makes video games so special compared to other forms of media is it does everything it can to blend the believable with the unbelievable, all while putting the player in those shoes. There's nothing better than walking out of the tutorial section of Skyrim, looking left or right, and just going there, surrounded by beautiful snowy hills and mountains. But what makes the storytelling so impeccable is that the developers have to do everything they can to convince you that you care and everything is meaningful, all while twisting things that aren't possible in real life. It's actually a lot harder than you think. Developing a story in a video game requires everything you'd expect in a movie: action, tension, suspense, sadness, but they also need to express these things to the player who has to walk through these trials. Oftentimes in games, you have multiple choices as well, which can branch into different outcomes. Best example would be Baldur's Gate 3. The possibilities are so limitless that it's impossible to have that kind of wanting for a revisitation from a movie. Don't get me wrong, I have movies I love to watch frequently, but when I can go back and see different outcomes that completely change the way the game works, it blows my mind. Nier Gestalt is one of my favorite stories of all time. I rather enjoy Replicant 2, but I find myself caring a lot more for Papa Nier than I do for Brother. Although sheesh, Brother Nier looks so cool. But Nier has one of those most epic plot twists in gaming history, heavily conveying emotions through its music, which was composed by, now if I butcher this, I am so sorry, but Japanese composer Keiichi Okabe, Keigo Hayashi, and Kakiro Ishiyama, with Emmy Evans, who also features on Drakengard 3 soundtrack. Now, what blows my mind about storytelling back in the day is you have to realize there wasn't a lot of voice acting in video games. Oftentimes, the game conveyed emotions to you through its music and setting. I'll use Parasite Eve for example. Parasite Eve is one of those games where you can feel the main character's struggles through the track that's being played in the background. It oftentimes is very compelling and convincing. So this is a spoiler warning if you haven't played Final Fantasy VII. It's kind of hard to not know the spoiler, considering how long the game's been out, but if you somehow don't know this bit of information, you have been warned. When Eris dies and you hear her theme that's been playing anytime she's taking the spotlight, you are equally as pissed as Cloud is. Where you were once a mercenary who cared less about the planet, now will do everything he can to save it. You feel every bit of that there, and it isn't a single voice in that game that convinces you to feel that way. That is a very special kind of storytelling if you ask me. Let's get into some combat and mechanics. There's a certain goofiness in video games that's so entertaining and you just don't get anywhere else. Everything has a lingo and gaming certainly isn't without. Whether it's cameos, Easter eggs, or just straight up funny, you'll always be surprised at what you can find in the game world. Whether you're Solid Snake hiding under a box, or Eve from Stellar Blade picking up various soda cans throughout the game because she's a bit dense when it comes to human culture. And now of course you have all types of different games that vary on what you're playing. You have FPSs, which, essentially is a POV that gives you the gun in your hands. Hack and slashes are my favorite, being the Devil May Cry fan that I am, and provide tons of different ways to dispatch enemies, whether you're bouncing them up in the air with your sword, or pulverizing them with your fists. Horror games can be differentiating, as there are some that prevent you from even fighting, and encourage you to run or hide, which, believe it or not, can be pretty awesome depending on the game. I think what gets people the most is they are given opportunities at their disposal that they don't have when going outside the real world. Getting in a flying car, living in medieval times, casting magics, it's all something that take people away from life being the ultimate boss fight. Now don't get me wrong, there is a thing called addiction, and I'm not saying that you shouldn't touch grass or anything. Everyone should go out and have a life. But as someone who loves the things I do, don't criticize someone for gaming and then go sit and watch TV all day. I know that when I perfect parry a boss in Sekiro, I just feel like a true shinobi, and it's an amazing feeling that I wish all people could feel. Now, developing a game isn't easy, and while I'm certainly no expert, oftentimes video games go through the process of stages and oftentimes turn into something completely different. Technology is constantly getting better, so while game developers do their best to see their vision come to fruition, they're always creating the next best thing, and companies want their platform to be on the best running engine. Oftentimes, development teams have to make deadlines, or the company they are working under put a lot of their own input on the game's development process. This can lead to burnout and people switching over teams. Now you have to remember, as well, when something like a new idea for a mechanic or a combat system is pitched, it isn't just worked on. The company has to be reached out, and they want to know if it will cost them more money. We want games to be successful, but we also want them to be profitable. That way we can make the best of the best. Developing a game certainly is not easy, and though I will say that for the most part, the gaming community is pretty fair on the development process of a game, you do have those few people that are pretty unfair towards the development team whenever it comes to them making a game. You have to think, there's a lot of confusion and a lot of burnt out when it came to the development process of Resident Evil 4. Wow, we even got Devil May Cry out of it. I hope you guys have a wonderful day, and I appreciate you for stopping by and listening to my ramblings about video games. This was a bit of a personal video I wanted to make for quite a while, and I'm glad I finally came around to it. Until next time, devil hunters and zombie killers.